that any human should be on right now, so I apologize if I'm if you can't hear my voice or anything like that, so please feel free to ask questions afterward. And before I get to this, I want to talk a little bit about the adventures of Frog and Toad. So specifically the adventure of cookies. So in this story, Toad makes what he considers to quickly be the best cookies he's ever made in his entire life. He says, these are so good, I have to give these to my homie Frog. So he goes over to Frog's house, and sure enough, Frog takes one bite and is like, these are the best cookies I've ever made. They proceed to then just stuff cookies into their mouth, one after another. Eventually they're like, we're gonna get sick if we keep eating these cookies. Like, I will have one more and then we'll stop. I'll have one more and then we'll stop. One more. And eventually Frog's like, you know what? We need to show you willpower. We're going to stop eating these cookies. Toad is like, what is willpower? Frog, ever wise, says willpower is trying hard not to do something you really want to do. When psychologists talk about self-control, this is really the image that is conjured, is that it's a student or a child just gritting and bearing it and suppressing immediately available information. Right? And then you transplant this into models where we know that self-control predicts achievement outcomes. And if we kind of assume that the reason that they are better able to do they have higher grades and so forth, is because they are more likely to suppress the information better, more often. But a closer examination reveals this might not be the full story. For example, we know that there are a lot of things that can go wrong with suppressing information. The first is that if you effortlessly inhibit temptation in one situation, it's going to impair your ability to do it in other situations, or ego. We also know that the ability to inhibit temptation is impaired by numerous experiences that are pretty common to everyday life, like stress and fatigue, right? Another thing that Dan Wegner showed us is that suppressing something has the ironic effect of actually making it more psychologically stable. So these limitations of suppression of temptation led us to think that this is probably not the whole story that's going on, right? There's something else that's happening. And in fact, we actually ran another study as part of this broader investigation and found that students with higher self-control report suppressing temptation less frequently than students with lower self-control. So again, what's going on? We propose that there's another mechanism that might be explaining this effect, and that's that students with higher self-control are forming better habits, which not only allows them to suppress temptation less frequently, but also predicts better habits. So habits can be defined as automatic behavioral dispositions that are triggered by situational or contextual cues. So habits are formed by repeating behavior over and over again under stable circumstances. So if you go into your car and you button your seatbelt, over and over, do this over and over again, eventually there's going to be an association formed so that when you just see your car, when you get in, you're going to automatically button your seatbelt. If you ever walk into a room when the power is out, you switch on the light switch, you're seeing a habit, right? It's not really, the fact that there's no power doesn't really stop you from doing it. If you think about a lot of academic goals, they're really rooted in this repetition. A successful student doesn't just study one time. Someone who's physically fit doesn't exercise once, right? Do this over and over and over again. And so this might be why habits and effective routines would actually be more beneficial over the long run for students. There's a couple other advantages to habit that might be worth considering. The first is that they don't require conscious attention. Right? These are automatic dispositions. So even if you're stressed, even if you're absent-minded, you have a lack of motivation, habits are still going to be active, still going to initiate those routines that have been established. And we suggest that because habits are automatically triggered dispositions, is that they have the added benefit of making us do work where it matters, right? On the task itself. So rather than deciding each day whether I'm going to study, what I'm going to study, overcoming the justifications for not studying, habits kind of circumvent all of that cognitive noise and allow you to redirect your effort towards the task itself. In fact, William James actually speculated on this in his Principles of Psychology in 1890. He said that we should make automatic as many useful activities as we can so that we can set free our higher mental powers for their proper And this speculation has been bolstered by research on elite performers. So world-class musicians, for example, engage in the most intensely effortful practice at about the same time each day. And this distinguishes them from expert performers who don't make that world-class status. Right? So it seems to suggest that world-class elite performers understand that habits actually can help them engage in the effort that's required to accomplish their goals. So before I move into the study, this is the theoretical model that we're testing. So again, insofar as self-control predicts long-term achievement outcomes, we're arguing that it does so primarily through the formation of effective or beneficial habits, which in turn facilitate effort, and then, cumulatively over time, these things should all explain why self-control students do better. Just a quick note on how to measure habits. So we use Wendy Wood's approach. She's a psychologist at the University of Southern California, and she multiplies the ratings of behavioral frequency with context stability. And this measurement approach really follows logically from how habits form, right? Repeating a behavior over and over again under stable conditions. So you get ratings of behavioral frequency as well as where they do it, so physical location and the time that they do it. Then you multiply those three ratings together and you get a roughly normal distribution of habit strengths. This is the approach that we took. In this study that I'm talking about, there are other ways that I'm happy to talk about afterward. Interested, but this is the approach. So the participants in this study were just over 900 high school seniors from 3 public high schools in the Northeast, roughly split by gender. And you can also see that the sample was racially and socioeconomically diverse. So the first assessment took place during their final semester of senior year in high school. This was in the winter of 2013. And during this assessment, students completed a battery of self-report questionnaires, self-control scale, questions like I pay attention to distractions, I can remain calm even when criticized or provoked. Self-report ratings of habit, which I mentioned earlier, is just this behavioral frequency, context ability. And then we also took some items from a study by Galla and colleagues on homework effort. So here, in our models, we also controlled for intelligence. This was measured through behavior reasoning tests, as well as. And then after that, we got their senior year grades from school records. And we also got, a year later, their college enrollment information from the National Student Clearinghouse. And the dependent measure here was continuous full-time enrollment in college. So we wanted to see if the students, after they graduated high school, were enrolled full-time for the whole freshman year. And this was at 2-year and 4-year schools. You can see here that just under 40% of students were enrolled full-time during the first year of college. Again, just really quickly, the correlations here, self-control was associated with both GPA and enrollment. And we also showed again, that, or actually for the first time here, that self-control was associated with stronger homework habits. Again, which is to say studying in the same place, at the same time, and doing it quite frequently. Okay, so again, this is what our hypothesized model. We tested this first with senior year GPA. This was just structural equation modeling. We controlled again for intelligence and demographic factors. And since I'm going to be talking about a lot of indirect effects, a lot of mediation pathways, we ran this using 5,000 bootstrap samples. It's kind of a new way of testing mediation. So the first indirect effect that we tested was whether habits mediated the effect of self-control on effort. That was statistically reliable. The next effect that we tested was whether habits mediated the effect of self-control on GPA assessed 3 to 6 months later. That was reliable as well. And then finally, we tested the full path model, where self-control predicts habits, which in turn predicts effort, which in turn then predicts higher grades, and that was also statistically reliable. We just replicated this with using full-time enrollment. Again, kind of the same structural equation path model. Here, these are odds ratios, because the college enrollment variable is primary, but yes, the full-time enrollment is they weren't. Just replicated again those indirect effects. This was pretty much the same indirect effect as the last model. And again, we showed here that habits mediated the effect of self-control on college enrollment. This was measured about 16 months later. This was a nice prospective effect here. And then again, the full path model is also. Okay, so just as a quick summary here, we're trying to provide some new evidence to explain why self-control students are doing better. And we propose that maybe less that they're inhibiting temptation frequently and more that they're actually forming beneficial habits. So we provided some evidence to show us that higher self-control was indeed related to more stable study habits. And that habits had important implications for doing well in school, right? So habits mediate the effect both of self-control on effort as well as on achievement outcomes measured between 3 and 6 and then 12 months later. And I think just to conclude, it forces us to slightly reconceptualize our notion of what a self-controlled student looks like. Maybe these students are less the ones who are constantly inhibiting temptation, right? For people, this seems obvious, right? Most people that we think of as being highly self-controlled are not constantly beating their heads against the wall, trying not to eat the second donut or watch YouTube instead of doing their homework or play Angry Birds, right? They seem to actually have structured their lives in such a way that they don't even need to inhibit temptation for accomplishing a lot of these important goals. So, with that said, I will say thank you for your attention. I'm happy to take any questions as well.
Question about
That's a great question. So this is the model that we chose to assess. We actually mentioned in the paper, right? We could easily see it being the other way around, right? So it's likely in all reality going to be a bidirectional, probably a virtuous cycle, right? So the people that have strong habits are going to be able to engage in more effort. They're going to get positive feedback from that, and it's going to further reinforce that habit, which is then going to lead to more effort. So this was just the theoretical model that we decided to test. To your question, it could very easily be the other way as well.
I have, just the way, if I have right now, why might I? Why might I?
Yeah, so what we're trying to argue is that one of the benefits of having a daily routine is that it's going to do this initiative automatically, right? Is that it permits a kind of circumvention of all of the justification, all of the kind of squandering of mental effort, just deciding what you want, right? So if you can set up your day or your evening in such a way that you just do your homework at 6 o'clock in the evening, is that you're going, at least what we're arguing, is that student should be more able to engage in a lot of effort on their homework, rather than a student who comes home and has their homework at 9 o'clock one day, will do it at 3 o'clock another day, they don't have a class, they just kind of do not add necessarily that structure. And we're arguing that to the degree that that structure, that automaticity matters, that it can then lead to facilitate greater effort. So again, your point is very well taken, and I think there is going to be this bidirectional association, at least that's theoretical framework that we're